Two yellow plants, two different answers. Put two yellow tomato plants beside each other. Same tired color, same weak look, same gardener standing there wondering what to do next. One of those plants may turn greener after a tablespoon of Epsom salt. The other may not change at all. And from a few feet away, you will not know which is which. That is what makes this little pharmacy recipe so useful, and also what makes it so easy to misuse. The mixture itself is simple. 1 level tablespoon of plain Epsom salt dissolved in 1 gallon of water. You will get the full method in a moment. But the recipe is not the hard part. The hard part is knowing whether that yellow plant is actually asking for magnesium, because a yellow leaf does not always mean the same thing. Sometimes the plant is short on magnesium. Sometimes it needs nitrogen. Sometimes the problem is iron. Sometimes the roots are sitting wet, sour, and half-starved for air. And sometimes the soil already contains enough magnesium, but the plant cannot use it because something else in the root zone is wrong. You know that plant that is not dead, but not really growing either? It just sits there, pale and tired, while the rest of the garden moves on. That is the plant that makes a gardener impatient. We want to help today. We want a cheap fix. We want that one spoonful to be the answer. It can be, but only when the leaf pattern gives you a reason. If you have ever stood over a pale plant with a watering can in your hand, you know the feeling. You do not want a chemistry lesson first. You want to know whether the plant can be saved, whether the yellowing will stop, and whether that cheap box from the pharmacy aisle is worth trying before the season gets away from you. That is why this video gives the recipe early, but it still puts the leaf test in front of the treatment. The goal is not to make you wait. The goal is to keep you from pouring the right mixture on the wrong problem. And that matters because a garden can make a person second-guess everything. You water, then wonder if you watered too much. You fertilize, then wonder if you burned something. You wait, then wonder if waiting was the mistake. A simple visual test gives you a calmer place to start. It turns a worried guess into a cleaner decision before the plant declines further. So before you mix the gallon, before you spray the leaves, before you pour anything around the roots, do one small check. Turn the plant slightly, lift the older leaves near the bottom, and look at where the yellow actually begins. That 10-second look decides whether the tablespoon has a real chance or whether you are treating the wrong problem with a very convincing recipe. The 10-second leaf test. Start with the older leaves, down low on the plant, not the new tips, not the pretty growth at the top. Look at the leaves that have been working the longest, because a magnesium shortage often shows itself there first. What you are looking for is yellow in the spaces and green along the veins. The tissue between the veins begins to fade, while the veins themselves stay noticeably greener. From a distance, the whole leaf may look pale. Up close, it looks like the green lines are still holding on while the areas between them are losing color. Gardeners call that intervenal chlorosis. You do not need to say that out loud in the garden. It simply means the leaf is yellowing between the veins. The useful part is not the name. The useful part is the location. Magnesium can move inside a plant. When the plant cannot get enough from the root zone, it may pull magnesium out of older leaves and send it toward newer growth. In a strange way, the plant is rationing. It lets the old leaves lose color so the young growth can keep going. That is why the lower leaves matter so much. But be careful here. This pattern is a clue, not a final diagnosis. It becomes stronger when the plant is in a container that has been watered all season, or in sandy soil, or in acidic soil, or in an old bed that has produced crops for years without much compost or balanced feeding going back in. A soil test can confirm the shortage, but even without one, you want the symptom and the growing conditions to agree. If the lower old leaves have that yellow between green veins look, magnesium moves higher on your list. If the yellow begins somewhere else, slow down. That is where many gardeners get fooled, because the same green vein pattern can show up on a different part of the plant for a different reason. The quick recipe reveal. Here is the recipe, so nobody has to wait half the video for it. 1 level tablespoon of plain Epsom salt in 1 gallon of water. Stir until every crystal is dissolved. Use plain magnesium sulfate only, with no fragrance, no lavender oil, no bath perfume, no skin softener, and no colored spa crystals. That is the whole mix. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, no handfuls, no guessing, no extra because the plant looks bad. 1 level tablespoon, 1 full gallon. Now hold that recipe in your mind. but do not use it blindly. The mixture is easy enough for anyone to make. The judgment is the part that separates a helpful gardener from a panicked one. A measured spoonful on the right plant can be a useful correction. The same spoonful on the wrong plant can waste time, add salts, and send you chasing the wrong cause, while the real problem keeps spreading. I like to think of this recipe as a key, not a fertilizer bag. A key is wonderful when it fits the lock. It is useless when it does not. So before we talk about pouring it or spraying it, we need to make sure another lock is not sitting in front of us. The first wrong lock is iron, the second is nitrogen, and the third is not a nutrient at all, but the hidden condition of the roots. 3 problems that look similar. Iron deficiency is the first look-alike. It can also create yellow tissue with greener veins, which is why gardeners often confuse it with magnesium. The difference is usually where it starts. Iron trouble commonly shows on the newest leaves near the top of the plant. Magnesium shortage more often shows on older leaves below. That simple old versus new check saves a lot of wasted effort. Magnesium usually speaks through the leaves the plant is willing to sacrifice. Iron often speaks through the leaves the plant is trying to build right now. Nitrogen deficiency can also make a plant look pale and weak, but nitrogen often fades the whole older leaf more evenly. Instead of clear green veins with yellow spaces between them, the leaf may look washed out from edge to edge. The plant may look generally hungry, smaller, slower, and thin. Magnesium often leaves a map. Nitrogen often drains the whole page. Then there is the root zone problem, and this one fools good gardeners every season. A plant can look hungry even when nutrients are already in the soil. If roots are damaged, soaked, dried out, crowded, diseased, or trapped in compacted potting mix, adding more minerals may not fix anything. Roots have to breathe. They have to take up water. They have to function. If the root system is struggling, the leaves may show hunger because the plant cannot use what is already around it. So feel the soil. If it is soggy for days, do not add more liquid and call it care. If water runs straight through a dry pot, slow down and rehydrate the mix properly. If the pot smells sour, if the leaves wilt while the soil is wet, or if several strange symptoms appear at once, the problem may be below the surface. This is where impatience hurts us. We see yellow, we reach for a remedy, and we feel productive. But a plant does not need us to be busy. It needs us to be accurate. Once the lookalikes are ruled out, the magnesium explanation becomes much easier to understand, and it does not need a long science lecture. Why magnesium changes the green. Magnesium is one of the materials a plant uses to keep its leaves green and working. It is part of chlorophyll, the green pigment that helps leaves capture light. That captured light supports the plant as it makes the energy it needs for growth, flowering, fruiting, and repair. So when magnesium is genuinely short, the plant may struggle to maintain strong green color, especially in those older leaves that give up their supply first. That is why a deficient plant can look pale, tired, and stalled. It is not just ugly. It is running short on one piece of the machinery that helps it use sunlight. But that is also why Epsom salt is so often oversold. It does not force a healthy plant to become supercharged. It does not make a balanced tomato suddenly become 3 tomato plants. It does not replace complete soil care. It replaces something a deficient plant may be missing. That is the honest middle ground. Not miracle, not useless. Specific. And honestly, specific is better. A specific tool tells you when to use it and when to leave it on the shelf. A cure-all sounds exciting, but cure-alls usually leave gardeners disappointed. Epsom salt is most useful when the leaf pattern, the plant history, and the soil situation all point toward the same shortage. So now the real question becomes practical. Which gardens are most likely to put a plant in that position, where this recipe makes the most sense? Containers are one of the first places I would look. A pot is a small world. The roots cannot search beyond the edge. Water moves through the mix again and again. By the middle or end of the season, a heavy feeding container plant may have used or lost more magnesium than you realize, especially if it has been producing flowers or fruit. Sandy soil is another likely place, because water moves through it quickly and can carry soluble nutrients away from the root zone. Gardens with heavy rainfall or frequent irrigation can run into the same issue. Acidic soil can also change nutrient availability, and old beds that have grown crops for years can become tired if harvests keep leaving, and very little organic matter returns. Houseplants can have their own version of the problem. A peace lily, citrus, ficus, or other potted plant can sit in the same mix for a long time, watered month after month, while the root zone slowly becomes less balanced. The plant may not collapse, it may just sit there looking pale, weak, and slightly disappointed in you. Tomatoes, peppers, roses, potatoes, container vegetables, and some houseplants are plants where gardeners often notice symptoms, but the plant name is not the permission slip. A tomato does not need Epsom salt just because it is a tomato. It needs magnesium only when magnesium is actually the missing piece. If the older leaves show the right pattern and the growing conditions make the shortage believable, then the recipe becomes targeted instead of random. That is when the $1 mixture finally belongs in your hand, and the next decision is how to apply it without causing a new problem. How to mix and apply it safely. Measure 1 level tablespoon of plain Epsom salt. Place it in a clean gallon container, add a small amount of water first, and stir until the crystals dissolve, then add the rest of the water until you have 1 full gallon. If the water is slightly warm at the beginning, the crystals dissolve faster, but do not overcomplicate it. The important part is complete dissolving and correct dilution. Use a clean watering can for a soil drench, or a clean, clearly labeled sprayer only if you choose a cautious leaf test. Never use a sprayer that has held weed killer unless the label cleaning directions have been followed completely, and even then, I prefer separate equipment. Herbicide residue can hide in hoses, seals, and nozzles. A mild nutrient mix can become dangerous if the container itself is contaminated. For most home gardeners, the safer first choice is a soil drench. Pour the diluted mixture around the active root zone of a plant that has reasonable signs of magnesium shortage. Do not drown it. Do not pour it into a pot that is already waterlogged. Use enough to moisten the root area without heavy runoff. A small pepper in a pot and a mature tomato in the ground will not need the same amount, so do not force one volume onto every plant. Foliar spraying may act faster in some situations, but faster is not automatically safer. Leaves can burn, especially in heat, sun, or stress. If you spray, test a few leaves first. Apply early in the morning or later in the evening. Avoid hot direct sun. Do not automatically add dish soap. Soap may help liquid spread, but it can also make tender leaves more likely to suffer. The recipe is simple. The discipline is the protection. 1 tablespoon is the recipe, not an invitation to add 3. Now, if the diagnosis is right and the plant can still respond, the next 7 days should be watched carefully, not judged like a magic trick. What 7 days really looks like. Day 1 and Day 2 are usually not about fireworks. You may not walk outside and find every old leaf turned dark green. What you may notice first is that the plant stops looking worse. The yellowing may slow. The leaves may hold themselves a little better. The whole plant may look less like it is sliding downhill. That small pause matters. Sometimes the first sign of recovery is not improvement. It is the trouble no longer spreading. By days 3 to 5, watch the newer growth. This is where many gardeners miss the real evidence because they keep staring at the worst old leaf. A badly damaged leaf may never become perfect again, but the next leaf may come in cleaner, greener, and less tired. The plant may begin to look as if it has found its footing. By days 6 and 7, a genuinely magnesium-deficient plant may show a more visible shift. The color can deepen, the top may look fresher, the plant may appear fuller because the newest growth is not coming in pale and weak. On a plant that was quietly starving for magnesium, that change can feel dramatic, like the plant woke up. That is the honest meaning behind the title. A corrected deficiency can make a plant look far stronger in a week. But 7 days cannot turn every plant into 3 plants. It cannot guarantee fruit, flowers, height, or yield on a plant that already had enough magnesium. The old leaf may not become perfect. The real victory may be the next leaf coming in healthy. And if 7 days pass with no meaningful change, the plant has not ignored you. It has answered you. If nothing changes, no response does not mean you should double the spoonful. It means the first guess may have been wrong, or the plant may be dealing with something Epsom salt was never meant to fix. Go back to the plant and read it again. Did the yellowing really begin on the older leaves, Or was it actually strongest at the top? Were the veins clearly greener, or did the whole leaf fade evenly? Did the plant have pest damage, disease spots, wilt, heat stress, or signs of root trouble at the same time? Check the soil again. A wet pot that stays heavy for days may be suffocating roots. A dry pot that sheds water down the sides may not be wetting the root ball at all. A bed with poor pH can make several nutrients harder to use. A plant recently moved, pruned, overheated, or overfed may simply be stressed. This is where a cheap recipe can become expensive, not because the product costs much, but because it delays the right fix. If nothing changes, do not immediately repeat. Do not make the mix stronger. Watch new growth, correct watering, improve drainage, inspect for pests, and consider a soil test if the plant is important enough to save. No response is information. It is not permission to pour on more. And there is one tomato problem where guessing with magnesium does not just miss the target. It can keep your attention on the wrong solution while the fruit keeps rotting. The tomato trap. If you have grown tomatoes long enough, you know the disappointment. The fruit looks good from the top. It begins to size up. You lift it gently, turn it over, and find a black, sunken, leathery patch on the bottom. That is blossom end rot, and it has sent many gardeners hunting for a fast household cure. Epsom salt is not that cure. Blossom end rot is connected to calcium not reaching the developing fruit properly. That does not always mean the soil has no calcium. Often the problem is movement. Calcium travels with water inside the plant, so irregular watering, stressed roots, drought followed by soaking, rapid growth, or poor root function can interrupt delivery. The fruit shows the failure because that is where calcium did not arrive when it was needed. Magnesium is a different issue. In some soil conditions, too much magnesium can even interfere with nutrient balance and make calcium uptake more difficult. That does not mean Epsom salt is the only cause of blossom end rot. It means it is the wrong tool for that symptom. On a yellow lower leaf, magnesium may be the missing piece. On a black tomato bottom, it may be a distraction. For blossom end rot, focus on steady moisture, healthy roots, mulch when useful, avoiding wild wet dry swings, and checking soil conditions when the problem repeats. Do not chase black fruit bottoms with more magnesium just because the tomato plant also has a few yellow leaves. A wrong diagnosis creates slow trouble, a wrong concentration can create fast injury, and that is where a simple recipe can turn rough in one afternoon. The mistake that burns plants. The recipe feels harmless because the ingredient is familiar. It sits in bathrooms, laundry rooms, and pharmacy aisles. It costs little. It looks clean and white. That makes people brave with it, but natural does not mean impossible to overuse. Cheap does not mean incapable of damage. The fastest way to cause trouble is to make the mixture stronger. A plant that is already stressed has less tolerance for mistakes. Strong solutions can increase the risk of leaf burn, especially when sprayed. Repeated unnecessary use can add soluble salts to containers, where excess does not have many places to go. In the ground, rain and irrigation may move some salts away. In a pot, the roots live with what you keep adding. Another mistake is treating every plant preventively. That feels efficient, but it is not careful. If only one plant shows a likely magnesium pattern, why treat 12 healthy ones? Start with the plant that gave you a reason. Product choice matters too. Do not use scented bath salts, lavender crystals, oils, perfumes, skin softeners, or colored bath blends. Those were made for bath water, not plant roots or leaves. Do not mix it in a soda bottle and leave it where someone can mistake it for something else. Use a labeled garden container and keep it out of reach, and keep herbicide sprayers separate. Old weed killer residue can cling where casual rinsing does not reach. Then later, you blame the Epsom salt when the real problem was the sprayer. Gardeners do report burned leaves and injured plants when mixtures are too strong or applied to plants that never needed magnesium. The point is not to fear the recipe, the point is to respect the measurement. The safest gardener is not the one with the most tricks. It is the one who knows when a trick does not belong. Targeted use or prevention. So should you use Epsom salt before symptoms appear, just in case? Most of the time, I would not. I understand the temptation. Preventing a problem sounds better than fixing one. but a plant with enough magnesium does not become healthier because you added more. Repeated unnecessary treatments can add salts, distract from better feeding, and make you think you are improving the soil when you are only adding one narrow ingredient. Treat Epsom salt like a repair tool, not a daily vitamin. You do not tighten every screw in the shed every Saturday just because you own a screwdriver. You use it when something is loose. This recipe belongs in that same category. Use it when the leaves, the plant history, and the soil conditions give you a reason. For long-term health, the boring habits still win. Add compost when appropriate. Use balanced fertilizer when your crop needs it. Refresh depleted potting mix instead of trying to rescue old mix forever. Improve drainage, water consistently. Manage pH when it is outside the range your plants prefer. If soil is acidic and magnesium is actually low, amendments such as dolomitic lime may make sense, but only when the soil calls for both. That is not as exciting as a $1 recipe, but it is how gardens become easier over time. The spoonful is a correction. Soil care is the foundation. Now we can finally answer the title without pretending the promise is either pure magic or pure nonsense. Final verdict. Can 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt in 1 gallon of water make a plant look dramatically better in about 7 days? Yes, when that plant is genuinely short on magnesium, the roots are still functioning, and the application is measured. That is the situation where the recipe earns its reputation. The yellowing may slow, new growth may come in greener, the plant may look less stalled, fuller, and more alive. Will it reliably triple every healthy plant in every garden within 7 days? No, that is not how plants work. A healthy plant with enough magnesium does not need the same correction. A plant with iron deficiency, nitrogen shortage, damaged roots, disease, pests, water stress, poor pH, or blossom end rot needs a different answer. The real formula is simple: the right symptom, the right growing condition, the right dilution, and a careful application. Leave out any one of those, and the tablespoon becomes a guess. So before you mix the pharmacy recipe, turn over 1 older lower leaf. Look for yellow in the spaces and greener veins in the lines. Then look at the pot, the soil, the drainage, the watering, and the plant history. If the picture fits, mix 1 level tablespoon of plain Epsom salt into 1 gallon of water and apply it gently around the root zone. Then watch the next week with patience, especially the new growth. If the picture does not fit, be patient enough to leave the box on the shelf. Sometimes the best garden decision is not adding the cheapest remedy. It is waiting long enough to understand what the plant is actually saying. Tell me in the comments what plant is yellowing for you right now. Did it start on the older leaves or the new growth? Are the veins still green? Is it in a pot or in the ground? And if you tried the 1 tablespoon recipe carefully, what changed after 7 days? If you want more practical plant checks, side-by-side garden tests, and honest household remedies without miracle claims, subscribe and keep following along. The tablespoon is cheap. The leaf test is what makes it powerful. Before mixing anything, turn over 1 old leaf. That 10-second check may save the plant or save you from treating a problem it never had.